It was the Super Bowl, the one game every football fan waits for. The crowd in the stadium roared, the air buzzing with excitement, and there I was, sitting in the VIP suite, one of the most coveted spots in the house. The San Francisco 49ers were making an incredible comeback, and I couldn't help but feel the energy around me. The taste of victory seemed just within reach for them, and for me, it was supposed to be a night of pure celebration. I had earned this moment, earned every second of it. But then my phone buzzed. I glanced down at the screen, half expecting it to be a family message or a friend texting about the game. But it wasn't. "Jessica, you're fired. I want you out by Monday. We want younger faces." Nothing personal. It took a second to process. My eyes lingered on the words. This wasn't a joke, and it definitely wasn't some strange spam message. This was my boss, Jordan Fox, the CEO of Gilman Enterprises, texting me while I sat in the VIP section of the stadium during the Super Bowl. It was the kind of moment you couldn't script, the kind of betrayal that felt unreal. Jordan had always been ruthless, but to fire me like this over a text, the audacity. "Nothing personal," he said, as if that would make it better. As if it would make it easier to digest. I wanted to throw my phone across the room. I should have. Instead, I just sat there, frozen, looking at the message again and again, trying to convince myself that this was some kind of mistake. But I knew it wasn't. I had worked at Gilman Enterprises for the past 8 years, helping the company grow, building relationships with high-profile clients, and putting in countless hours. I had dedicated my life to this place. And now, in one text message, it was all gone. I couldn't help but notice the man sitting next to me in the suite. He was older, maybe mid-50s, wearing a perfectly tailored suit and an air of calm that only someone used to high-stake situations could have. He was watching the game intently, but I could tell his attention was subtly shifting to me. I'd seen that look before. People who noticed everything, who could read body language better than most. It was then that I recognized him. Gerald Knight, Chief Executive Officer of Titan Innovations, the one company Gilman had been trying to outpace for years. We had crossed paths before, but only briefly at conferences and business events. He had always been polite, professional, but distant. He had always seemed like a quiet competitor, someone who didn't make a lot of noise, but got things done. And yet, here he was, sitting next to me at the Super Bowl, and I couldn't help but feel a wave of recognition wash over me. Everything about the moment felt off. I slipped my phone into my pocket, trying to maintain some composure, but my heart was racing, my stomach in knots. I had just been fired. Humiliated in front of a man who could very well be the next one to steal everything I had worked for. "Everything okay?" Gerald asked, his voice calm, but laced with curiosity. His accent was distinctly British, and it only added to the feeling that something was about to shift. I turned to look at him, forcing a smile, but the weight of the situation felt too heavy to pretend. "Yeah, just work stuff," I said, trying to brush it off. But I knew he could tell something was wrong. His gaze never wavered from mine. He was studying me. I could feel the tension growing. A quiet undercurrent of something that was building. His interest in me wasn't just casual. He knew who I was. He knew what I did. And he knew that something had just happened that could change the course of my career. I leaned back in my seat, staring at the game. But in my mind, all I could see were the words from Jordan's text. I tried to steady myself, but everything inside of me was screaming. He didn't even give me a phone call. No meeting, just a text. "You know," Gerald said slowly. "If you're willing to discuss business, I think we might be able to work something out." His eyes met mine, and there was something about his tone that made my heart race in a completely different way. This wasn't just small talk. This wasn't just a friendly gesture. There was an opportunity here. An opportunity I hadn't expected. It hit me. I had been with Gilman Enterprises for 8 years, but Gerald Knight was sitting right next to me offering me something. Something that just moments ago I would have never even considered. I smiled a little tighter than I wanted. "I think I'd be very interested in hearing what you have to say." This wasn't just about the text from Jordan anymore. It wasn't just about the betrayal. It was about something bigger, something far more significant. I wasn't about to let my career slip away. Not just like that, not over a text. And Jordan had no idea what was coming next. The game raged on, but I couldn't focus on the field anymore. My mind was swirling, the text from Jordan still fresh on my screen, and now Gerald Knight's words echoing in my head. I think we might be able to work something out. The words had been simple, but the weight they carried was anything but. This wasn't just a casual comment. There was an offer here, an opportunity for something bigger, something that could change everything. I shifted in my seat, trying to regain some semblance of composure. I glanced at Gerald again. He hadn't taken his eyes off the game, but I could tell he was waiting for me to say something, to take the next step. "Would you mind if we talked a bit more?" I asked, my voice steadier than I felt. Gerald turned to me, a smile tugging at the corners of his lips as if he'd been 000616 expecting me to ask this very question. "Not at all," he said, his voice smooth, confident. "I'm here to listen." The next few minutes felt like a blur as I steered the conversation toward business. I tried to keep my tone casual, but every word I spoke carried a sense of urgency. Jordan's text had left me shaken. But now I was driven by something else. The possibility of something greater, something that I hadn't even considered before. Gerald listened attentively, occasionally nodding. His calm demeanor a stark contrast to the storm brewing inside me. I spoke about my career at Gilman Enterprises, what I had built, the contracts I had secured, the relationships I had fostered across the country. I talked about the changes I had seen over the years, the rise of younger, more aggressive players in the market, and the way the company had shifted under Jordan's leadership, but I didn't mention the betrayal yet. I didn't mention how the firing had felt like a slap in the face. When I finished, Gerald didn't speak immediately. He seemed to be contemplating something, weighing the options. I waited, knowing that whatever he said next could change everything. "You've been with Gilman Enterprises for a long time," he said finally, his voice thoughtful. "But it sounds like they've been taking you for granted, Jessica. From what I've heard, your talent, your ability to secure clients is what's been keeping them ahead." But now he let the words hang in the air. "Now I have a chance to offer you something different." I held my breath. This was it. The moment of truth. "I'm looking for someone who can take charge of our expansion into the American market." He continued. "I've heard about your relationships with some of the top players in the industry. And frankly, I think we could use someone like you on our team. You wouldn't be just another executive. You'd be in charge of something big. A major piece of our growth strategy." My heart skipped a beat. This was more than just a job offer. This was an invitation to something much bigger. "And what's the offer?" I asked, trying to keep my voice neutral. Though inside, I was already envisioning what this could mean. Gerald smiled slightly. "A seat at the table, a leadership role in our American operations. You'll be given full autonomy to build out the business here. We'll offer you an attractive salary and an equity stake in the company. In addition, I'm prepared to offer you more than just a title. I want you to have real influence, real control over the direction we take in this market." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. The opportunity before me was enormous, far more than I had ever expected. It felt surreal, almost too good to be true. But the way he spoke with such confidence and certainty made it clear that he was serious. I nodded slowly, my mind racing. "And what's the catch?" I asked, trying to regain some semblance of composure. Gerald's smile didn't fade. "No catch, just hard work. We're building something special at Titan Innovations, and I believe you could be an integral part of that. But the question is, are you ready to make the leap?" It wasn't just a question about the job. It was a question about me, about my future, my career, and what I wanted out of life. I didn't hesitate. "I'm ready," I said, my voice firm. "I want to be part of something bigger, something that values experience and relationships over just the next shiny face." Gerald's eyes lit up, and for the first time that evening, I felt a sense of relief, as if a weight had been lifted off my shoulders. The fire I had been holding back was finally starting to burn. "Good," he said, standing up and offering me his hand. "Let's make it happen." As we shook hands, I couldn't help but think about Jordan, about how his text had been the catalyst for something far bigger than I could have imagined. I had been fired. But in that moment, sitting next to the CEO of my biggest competitor, I realized that it was the best thing that could have ever happened to me. The game may have been over for the 49ers, but for me, it was just beginning. The following week felt like a whirlwind. What had started as a shocking text from Jordan Fox had rapidly morphed into something far more significant. As I sat in my office at Gilman Enterprises one last time, clearing out my desk, I felt a strange sense of satisfaction. I had no idea that a week ago, sitting courtside at the Super Bowl, I would be in this position. But now, with the offer from Titan Innovations on the table, the future seemed full of possibilities. Jordan hadn't even reached out since the text. Not that I expected an apology or explanation. He was too busy trying to salvage what was left of his crumbling empire. I had already learned from Patricia, a colleague in HR, that the company was struggling to keep clients happy, especially after my departure. It was a small but satisfying piece of information, knowing that I hadn't been the only one whose departure had shaken things up. But now, my focus was entirely on the opportunity ahead of me. I had spent hours on the phone with Gerard Knight, discussing the finer details of my role at Titan Innovations. The more we talked, the more I realized that this wasn't just a job offer. It was a chance to take everything I had learned over the past decade and put it to use in a company that appreciated my experience and relationships. I had already made the decision. Titan Innovations was where I belonged now. The day I officially handed in my resignation was nerve-wracking, but not for the reasons I had expected. I had prepared myself for the confrontation with Jordan, for the uncomfortable moment when I would have to face him. But to my surprise, when I walked into his office, he barely looked up from his computer. "Jessica," he muttered without even glancing in my direction. "I see you've made up your mind." I didn't respond at first. I simply handed him the resignation letter I had drafted earlier that morning. He didn't ask me why. He didn't argue or try to convince me to stay. Instead, he nodded absently, still focused on the screen in front of him. "Thanks for your time," he said flatly. "I'll have HR process your exit. Good luck." Good luck. The words hit me harder than I expected. After everything I had done for this company, all the sacrifices, the long nights, the travel, the relationships I had built, it all came down to a simple, dismissive, "good luck." I didn't say a word as I left his office. The reality of what had just happened settled in. This was the final step in my departure from Gilman Enterprises. But as I walked out of the building for the last time, I couldn't help but feel a rush of excitement. I was free and I was moving on to something far better. A few days later, I sat across from Gerard Knight in his sleek London office. We had finalized the details of my contract, and now it was time to discuss the next steps. "Are you ready to hit the ground running?" Gerard asked, leaning back in his chair with a smile. His eyes gleamed with confidence, and I could see why Titan Innovations had become a force in the industry. He was a man who knew what he wanted and how to get it. "Absolutely," I said, feeling a wave of anticipation. "I've been preparing for this moment for years." Gerard nodded, clearly impressed. "I know you have. That's why I'm bringing you in to oversee our American expansion. We've had our eyes on this market for some time now, and with you on board, I'm confident we can take the lead." I smiled. It wasn't arrogance. It was the confidence that came from knowing you had the tools to succeed. This wasn't just about stepping into a new job. This was about proving to myself and to everyone else that I could build something even greater than what I had left behind at Gilman. We spent the next hour discussing strategy, how we would position Titan Innovations in the American market, the key players we needed to connect with, and the roadmap for expansion. I was surprised by how much autonomy Gerard was willing to give me from the start. This wasn't just a job. This was a chance to create something from the ground up. As I left the meeting, I felt a fire inside me that I hadn't felt in years. This was it. This was my opportunity to show the world what I was truly capable of. And more importantly, this was my chance to prove to myself that my career didn't have to be defined by a company that saw me as disposable. That night, as I sat in my hotel room, I reflected on everything that had led me to this point. I thought about the years I had spent at Gilman Enterprises, the relationships I had built, the clients I had secured, and then I thought about the betrayal, the cold text that had set everything in motion. In the past, I would have let that kind of injustice consume me. But now, I felt nothing but gratitude. Jordan had underestimated me. He had thought that firing me would be the end of my career. What he didn't know was that he had set me free. I had a new mission now. One that had nothing to do with proving him wrong, but everything to do with proving to myself that I could achieve something greater than I ever imagined. I wasn't just going to survive. I was going to thrive. And as the night sky stretched out over London, I knew that my journey was only just beginning. Titan Innovations had given me the opportunity to reinvent myself, and I wasn't going to waste it. The weeks following my decision to join Titan Innovations were a blur of meetings, phone calls, and preparations. I immersed myself in the process of establishing Titan's presence in the American market. But even amidst all the new projects and opportunities, the shadow of my departure from Gilman still lingered. Every time I spoke to a potential client or met with the internal team at Titan, I couldn't shake the nagging thought that Jordan Fox was out there somewhere trying to salvage what was left of the European Division I had helped build. But it was more than just that. It was the realization that I wasn't just a casualty of a failed corporate relationship. I was part of a bigger narrative, one where corporate politics, egos, and misguided power plays often decided who succeeded and who didn't. As I sat in the sleek, modern conference room at Titan's London headquarters, I couldn't help but feel a surge of power I hadn't expected. I had walked away from Gilman Enterprises, yes, but now I was in control. I was the one who would decide how this next chapter of my career would unfold. And the more I spoke with clients, the more I realized just how many of them trusted me. They knew my name. They remembered the work I had done. And now they wanted me back. One particular meeting stands out. I had been in talks with Klaus Baer, a major player in the tech industry for years. At Gilman, I had worked tirelessly to secure a deal with his company. But as was always the case with Jordan, the success had been overshadowed by his insistence on taking credit for everything. When I reached out to Klaus again, this time under the banner of Titan Innovations, I expected a level of resistance. After all, I was no longer part of the company that had helped his business grow. What I didn't expect was the warmth in Klaus's voice when I called him. "Jessica," he said, "it's been too long. I heard about your departure from Gilman. You know, you were always the reason I kept working with them. Let's talk." I sat back, stunned. I had always known that the relationships I had cultivated with clients weren't just transactional. They were built on trust, on mutual respect, and on years of hard work. But to hear Klaus, one of the biggest names in the industry, speak so candidly about my value was humbling. After our conversation, I felt like I had just crossed a line. I wasn't just moving forward with my career at Titan. I was bringing along the relationships I had forged, the work I had done. And suddenly, the offer from Titan seemed like the perfect fit. This was not just an opportunity to rebuild. It was a chance to make an even bigger impact. But not everyone was as enthusiastic about my transition. As I settled into my new role, Jordan's shadow continued to follow me. I had left him behind, but he hadn't left me. Every client I spoke to, every business deal I began to initiate, I could feel his presence in the background. There was no denying it. He was trying to undermine me. A few days after Klaus confirmed his interest in moving forward with Titan, I received an email from one of my former colleagues at Gilman. It was short and to the point. "Jordan is making moves behind the scenes. He's trying to convince clients that you're unstable. He's even called a few of them personally to say you're no longer with the company and that your departure was mutual." It was like a punch to the gut. Jordan had been playing the game all along, trying to ensure that my departure would reflect poorly on me, but he didn't know one crucial thing. I wasn't done yet. What he didn't understand was that every move he made only made my position stronger. As I sat at my desk at Titan, reviewing contracts and preparing proposals, I realized how much I had underestimated myself. I had thought my worth was tied to one company, one brand. But now, as I looked at the opportunities unfolding before me, I saw the truth. My relationships, my experience, my understanding of the market. Those things were invaluable. And it was clear to me now. I wasn't just competing with Jordan. I was playing a bigger game, one where I could outmaneuver him at every turn. The following weeks were filled with strategic calls and meetings with Titan's top executives. They were all excited about the clients I was bringing with me, and the momentum was building. Every time I picked up the phone, there was a sense of urgency and possibility that hadn't been there before. With each new client, my confidence grew, and with it, the distance between my past at Gilman and my present at Titan. But even as I reveled in the success, Jordan was still lurking. I had received more updates from Patricia. Word around the office was that Gilman was desperately trying to hold on to its clients. They were offering deep discounts, promising better services, and even starting to restructure entire divisions. They had no idea what they were up against. I smiled to myself. I had known exactly what I was doing when I left. I had been fired, but Jordan's plan to get rid of me had backfired in ways he couldn't have possibly predicted. What he thought was a simple firing had turned into an opportunity for me to take control of my future, and it was one I wasn't going to let slip away. A week later, as I reviewed my strategy for Titan's US expansion, I felt a shift. The momentum was building, and I could feel the power of my position growing with every call I made. Jordan had underestimated me. And now I was about to show him just how wrong he was. This was my time and there was nothing he could do to stop it. It wasn't just about revenge. It was about proving that loyalty, hard work, and integrity always paid off in the end. And Jordan Fox was about to learn that lesson the hard way. The phone call came late one evening just as I was wrapping up a meeting with a potential client in New York. It was a number I didn't recognize, but something told me it was important. I hesitated for only a moment before answering. "Jessica, it's Patricia," came the voice on the other end. "I've just heard from some of the people at Gilman. You won't believe this." I leaned forward, instinctively bracing myself. "They're panicking." Patricia continued, her voice low. "I've been getting updates all day. It seems like word is spreading fast about your new role at Titan. Your clients are backing you, but there's more." I was quiet, waiting for her to continue. "Riley's not just losing clients. He's losing control. They're trying to save face by throwing you under the bus, saying you were the one who abandoned them first. They're doing everything they can to push the blame onto you." I sighed. I had expected this. Jordan and his team were desperate, looking for anyone to blame for their growing mess. But it wasn't going to work. Did they really think I was going to just fade into the background? I said, shaking my head. I built those relationships. They didn't understand how deep my ties were to the clients they now think they can replace me with. "I think they're about to find out the hard way." Patricia said, "Word on the street is that Riley is getting pressure from the board. The German firm he's been negotiating with for the European division is pulling out fast. They've just lost 2 of their biggest contracts." The news hit me like a punch to the gut, but I knew I had already played my part. The cards were falling in place, and Riley had no idea what was coming next. I took a deep breath. It's only a matter of time before they realize what happened. "How fast can we move on this?" Patricia hesitated, then replied, "I've already got the lawyers looking into it. The next few days are crucial. If we make a move now, they won't be able to recover from this." The next morning, I woke up early, my mind buzzing with plans. Titan Innovations was growing faster than I had imagined, and the clients I had brought in were thrilled with the direction we were headed. But as much as I was enjoying the progress, there was something deeply satisfying about the way everything was unfolding. I had never expected Jordan to collapse so quickly. But then again, his arrogance had always been his downfall. I spent the day on calls discussing final contract details with the new clients while simultaneously preparing for the next phase of my strategy. I had to be patient. Timing was everything now. I couldn't rush the process. I had to let the foundation of trust I had built over the years work for me. Then, just as I was finishing up the final touches on an expansion plan, I received another call. This time from Gerard. "Jessica, I need you to listen carefully," he said, his voice serious. "I've just received a very interesting phone call. Riley Fox is in full damage control mode. He's calling people left and right, trying to keep them from jumping ship. But there's something more. He's trying to do damage to your reputation, saying you sabotaged the European division on your way out. I gripped the phone tighter, a surge of anger rising in my chest. I'd known this was coming, but hearing it straight from Gerard made it feel real. They've already filed paperwork with the board accusing you of breach of contract. Gerard continued. But here's where things get interesting. I've just seen the paperwork. They've been backdating things and we've got a case to expose their lies. I felt a sense of calm wash over me. The tension from the past few days suddenly lifting. This was it. This was my moment to not only expose their lies, but to finish what they had started. I've already spoken with the lawyers. We're ready to file. Gerard said, this is your chance to take everything back, but it has to happen quickly. We're going to hit them with everything we've got. I took a deep breath, steadying myself. Let's do it. The following Monday morning, I walked into Titan's office with a clear sense of purpose. The last few weeks had been a blur of calls, meetings, and strategy sessions, but now everything felt like it was coming to a head. My clients were all on board, and Titan was positioning itself for rapid growth. But there was one final piece of the puzzle that needed to fall into place. Gerard and I had worked out a plan to expose the false claims Riley had made about me, and we were ready to present it to the board of directors. We had proof of the backdated documents, the lies he had spread, and the deals he had tried to make behind the scenes to cover his own tracks. As I walked into the meeting with Gerard by my side, I couldn't help but feel a small smile tug at the corners of my mouth. This was it. I had taken everything I had learned, every lesson from the past, and turned it into something more powerful than I ever thought possible. The room fell silent as I stood before the board. Riley was sitting at the far end of the table, his face flushed with anger. He knew exactly what was coming, and this time I wasn't going to back down. Thank you for your time, I began, my voice steady. I'm here to show you the truth. And the truth is, your leadership has been built on lies. I watched as the board members shifted in their seats, glancing nervously at each other. Riley's eyes darted between us, and I could see the panic creeping into his expression. I had done it. I had taken everything back. I had shown them that I was more than just an employee to be discarded. I was a force to be reckoned with. By the time the meeting ended, Riley was being escorted out of the building. The board had voted to remove him from his position, and in his place, Gerard Knight would be stepping in as the new CEO. The company was finally in the right hands. As I left the boardroom, I felt a sense of quiet satisfaction. The game had changed and I was the one who had rewritten the rules. And in the end, it wasn't just about taking down Jordan Fox. It was about proving to myself that no matter how many obstacles they put in my way, I would always find a way to rise above them.